removing these portable trellises. There's a video on how to make these if you're interested. These portable trellises, these are half the size of the original ones that I made, and they're really good for holding the beans up as they start to age, and it makes accessing the beans a little bit easier. Such a beautiful day today out in the patch. It's a bit cooler with the autumn weather coming in. It's been delightful working out here compared to the summer. So here I'm taking out all of the Shine Wellbeing plant labels. These are great, but I won't rub this off. I'll just keep them and pop them away for next year, because I know that I've got the seed and I know that they're definitely something I'm going to redo. These little baskets are great. They're quite fine, so the beans don't slip through the holes like they do in the outdoor harvest baskets. And this little hanging basket that I've got here is great. I'm going to use that to store all of the material that's good enough for the compost crew to enjoy. So these two baskets, one is for the beans that are edible, the other is for the beans that are going to be kept for seed. The little white hanging baskets for the compost crew's material, and then the stuff that I'm throwing across is going into the wheelbarrow, which is going to go straight into the 3-bay composter. Always have a bit of fun trying to get the stuff into the wheelbarrow. There's quite a number of snails in underneath these bean plants, so you can see here on the side that I've got the slimy terminator handy, and by the time I was finished it was nearly half full, so there's quite a number of snails in there. And the great thing with the compost crew is that they're lovely characters. So this one coming up now is Briggs. They're all named after lawnmowers and tractors. So the one off to the left is Stratton. So you've got Briggs and Stratton, and then in the back there is Victor and Toro. The great thing with the compost crew is they'll turn this material into pelletised manure overnight. In under 24 hours, you can see them just tearing through. As soon as it's put in there, they just adore the material that comes from the VegPatch. And they'll just turn all of that into amazing manure, which will then just go back into the garden. So it's a much faster way than just using a traditional composting system. And it's a little more fun as well. There's no effort to take care of. You can see they have their little box with some sugarcane mulch, and then I just use all of that to make the magic mulch that you see in many of the videos. So we're on the other side of the Veg Temple 5 now, finishing off with the beans. And you can see the process that nothing goes to waste. I like to make sure that we're using everything to the best of our capacity. These beautiful beans are so lovely. Petunias in the black urn have done really well this year, especially through the hot, dry summer. They just continued to flower, but in underneath there we've got jonquils that are just starting to come through, which is going to be quite lovely. I think they're an early cheer variety. And you'll see that I actually snap the beans off at ground level. I don't want to disturb those roots because those roots are going to compost down into the soil and continue to improve the soil as well. These ones I decided to dry just straight off of the bush, and I'll hang them up here to finish off for a week or two, and then we'll strip them off and harvest the beans. Now that this bed is cleared out, we'll fertilise it. Look at that beautiful harvest of beans. Okay, so now Veg Temple 5 is cleared out. I'm going to plant it out with onions. I like to do this in the shade so that it doesn't kind of dry the roots out too much, and I use the patch plate with a bit of water and sea salt. And so the roots stay nice and moist. I just like to lay my onions out. I find that this is a much quicker way of doing it rather than doing it actually in situ where I'm going to plant the plants. It takes more time, so a little bit easier, and they're not exposed to the sun. So I'm going to water this bed in now and just make sure the soil's prepared and nice and moist. And then the patch plate holds all of the onions. I'll dig a couple of trenches. I just go with a nice long trench. Just clear it right out. And then grab a couple of the separated onions and start laying them down. I plant mine about 10 centimeters or so apart. I don't mind them nice and close, and I'll strip out anything that feels like it's getting too tight and use that as an early harvest, and that makes room for some larger bulbs down the track. But you'll notice that I'm laying the onions down on the side of the trench, and then I just push the soil back over, so all of those onions are still lying down, and that's perfectly fine. They'll stand themselves up in a couple of days. So you can see how they're just lying over, but in a day or two they'll pop back up nice and straight. So add a little viola now into the corner right next to the slug pub. And of course, lots and lots of sugarcane mulch. So I did an experiment earlier, a couple of weeks ago, where I planted onions in a bed that was already mulched heavily, and then I planted onions into the soil without the mulch. And you can see here I've done the onions without any mulch, and that's because when I've planted them in the mulch, they've actually had a far less success rate. So I've just ducked out to grab a beer from hubby's beer fridge and to fill up the slug pubs and just do a little bit of maintenance there. Don't need much in them, just a little. And I'll bring all the slugs and snails to them and job will be done. Okay, so here we are, project number 2, and we're going to save some seed for next season. So these are the seedy briefcases that I've just brought out, and my trusty black trays. These are so handy. I love doing this work out here on the back deck. Let's start with the lettuce seed. So this is a cos lettuce, and I'm just going to gently break off the seed heads. Lettuce seed's such a fine seed that I know that I'm not going to get this 100% clean, so I'm not worried about that. It'll store fine as long as everything's dry. So I'll take out what I can, but otherwise it'll just be a little bit of the seed chaff in with the seed itself, which is no real problem anyway. Of course, if you're buying it commercially, you wouldn't want that, but for a home kept seed, it's no problem at all. So I've got a silicone drying sheet here, and then a pizza baking tray, an old one. And here's our raw hollyhock seed. Once it's dry, you can just rub it in your hands. If it's a little bit moist, this won't work, but I've dried this out for a couple of weeks. And you'll see the seeds just starting to break through the pods of the seed capsule itself. Clearly I need a bigger thing. Not really. So here I'll just fold that sheet up and then just give it a bit of a rub, and you can see the dust coming out. So this is separating the seed from the actual seed capsule. And this is why you want your seed nice and dry when you're storing hollyhocks, because it is very, very difficult to get the outer husk of the seed to break away if it's got any moisture in it. So you can see I just use the one tray as my waste tray and then keep the other one as my working tray. And then folding the silicone sheet makes it a perfect pouring spout to put it into the bag. What an incredible haul from just one hollyhock plant. Beans are next, so we're going to work on the bush beans. So these are already been shelled, and then the green beans are still too moist to harvest yet, so I'm going to leave them to dry and brown out. But the ones that have already been shelled, I'm going to store in this old cutlery holder, and that'll just stop the mice getting into them, and they can continue drying. Our next seed is a long red pepper. I don't know what variety it is or type. I can't remember now. This is one of the disadvantages of not labeling things when you get the seed. But it was delicious, I remember that. So we definitely want to keep the seed, and I'm sure we'll work out what it is next year. So hopefully you'll still be around to watch and discover what kind of pepper it is. But it's well dried, so now I'm just going to separate the seed from the membrane of the pepper. This really is quite relaxing work. All that waste is going to end up in the worm kitchen, so nothing really goes to waste. It'll all end up going back into the veg patch. So fold that sheet again and make a perfect pouring spout and pop it into the bags. Now I've used plastic bags here. I don't usually use them, but it's just so that you can see the actual seed for the video, but most of the time I would store them in a envelope. And I'm going to try these this year and see how they go. Okay, so today's haul of seeds has come down to these 3 bags of hollyhocks. So this is all of the seed that came from the double pink hollyhock from Veg Temple 6 that you saw being harvested the other week. I used the silicone mat. This is the best way to do it, or the best way I've found to do it, is using these black trays. So these black trays are $3 from Kmart, and they're really handy. I've got quite a number of these that I use for preserving all kinds of different projects, but and then with a good wash they just come up brand new. The silicone mat has some small holes in it, so it does allow the dust to come through, so it's great for separating the dust from your seed. And these are actually drying sheets that you use in the dehydrator, which I bought separately from eBay. They're very cheap, so they're really handy, and that's kind of my go-to for large seed harvesting. To harvest my larger seeds, I love to use these old pizza baking trays. They've got the holes so you can get some airflow in them. They are propped up a little through each of the segments, so it sort of allows that airflow to come up even if it is on a flat surface. And then they're really great because they do have this little pouring spout, so for anything like larger seeds and things, you can just pour them straight out and quite easily manage them. The pizza baking tray is really great because you can shell them on here and then just tip the seed off with that spout, and it can go straight into a container. This old cutlery drying unit is great for storing seeds while you're waiting for them to finish drying. But with seeds like beans, if you leave them out like this once they're dry, the mice are going to get to them. So to avoid that, I use this, and I've got an old lid that I got off of an old soy candle, and I just pop it on the top. Still allows the airflow. The beans can continue drying in there, and I don't end up with losing a heap of my beans to the mice. So really handy. Highly recommend that. I just throw a piece of paper in there so I remember which beans they are. So that's in there. I'll leave them to dry there for another month or so, and then when they're fully dry, I'll pop them away and store them in the seedy briefcases. So seedy briefcases, these guys here, one of them was damaged when I received it, so I used some hot glue to stick it back together. But yeah, so we've got their seedy briefcases, 3 of them. Inside of them they have these little handy storage containers. These are actually photo boxes. So I label them according to what I've got in there. So this is all of the lettuce seeds. So once I pack that up, the lettuce seed that we harvest today is going to go in there. And prevent any mold, I do use the moisture absorbers, and these are quite handy. I buy them in a large amount and just keep them with the seeds, and when I pop the seeds in, I put a fresh one in. This large haul of hollyhock seeds not going to fit into the seedy briefcase, so it goes into here. So this is where I put any of my larger seeds that don't fit, and it just goes into this box. It's an old box that my father actually gave me many years ago before he passed, and in here, this where our hollyhock seed will live. And then we'll throw some of the moisture absorbers in there just for good measure. Make sure it stays nice and dry. And that's a job done. I just throw that bit of cloth over the top just to prevent the light, because this isn't 100% sealed, but it is vermin proof, so very good. So that's how I store my seeds. That's how we harvest our seeds. This is all the waste that we got from today. So that's everything. This will go into the worm kitchens, so nothing will go to waste. So I hope you found today's video useful. Thanks so very much for watching. Have a beautiful day. Shine on.